Jackie Bird. She was the one who gave me the bone marrow transplant.
Save a life while you can in your lifetime.
Good morning, everybody. I'm ALC Scott. I'm the president and CEO of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. We want to thank you for coming out this morning. On behalf of our board of directors, CBC members, CBC spouses, we want to welcome you to the annual legislative conference, better known as ALC, or even better known as Black Caucus Weekend, but to the annual legislative conference. We have a tradition of bringing together African Americans from throughout the country to spend 4 days talking about the critical issues that impact people of color, not just here in this country, but throughout the world. The name of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation is synonymous with leadership education and public policy information for over 4 decades. From our earliest days, our founders envisioned an organization that would stimulate growth and equity in the African American communities by channeling our focus on legislative and public policy arenas. Our theme this year is Reinvest, Rebuild, and Renew. When we chose this theme, this country was in the middle of a deep economic recession. But at the time we chose the theme, we were optimistic that the measures that were being put in place by our president and our Congress, that we would begin to see some economic recovery, and we are pleased that we are moving in that direction. So we were looking to bring people together to talk about how do we move forward past the recovery, how do we rebuild our communities, how do we renew and capture on some of the energy that was generated around last year's election. We're happy that we are expecting over 12,000 people here to join us here at the Capitol today and at the Convention Center later in the week. But as we come together, we are also mindful of the fact that many of the people in our communities are still hurting. And so we'll be looking to talk about solutions in which we can reach out to the least among us, as well as the middle class and others in our communities. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation is very pleased that the members of Congress have joined us today. We are partnering with them together on this event. We partner together with them in providing scholarships and fellowships for deserving young people. Many of them would never get a chance to come and work in the nation's capital. I'm very pleased for the past 3 years to have served under the chairmanship of Congressman Kendrick B. Meek, and at this time we'll hear from the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Congressman Kendrick B. Meek from the state of Florida.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Scott, and I want to thank everyone for being here this morning. I'm very excited about not only the planning that has gone into putting on this great conference, but also the work of not only Dr. Scott, but also our ALC co-chairs, Shaka Fattah and Congressman Shaka Fattah from Pennsylvania, and also Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. I also want to recognize and thank our chair, Congresswoman Barbara Lee of the Congressional Black Caucus, for her leadership and her vision in helping guide this process and allow us to be able to put together the kind of brain trust and the kind of theme and the kind of spirit that we have to have at this time. The Poverty Summit that will take place after this press conference is very, very appropriate, not only because we're in a recession, because we still have people that are trying to provide not only for their families, but also for their communities. And poverty is alive and well in America. It's very appropriate for us to be here this morning just down from Emancipation Hall because of our ancestors who built this Capitol. Little would they know, only through prayer and hope, that we would stand here today as full members of Congress some 150 years plus later in the very building that they built without recognition and without appreciation for so many years. I'm so glad that behind me you have chairs of committees You have members that are part of the public policy discourse, and you also have descendants from those individuals. I encourage everyone in the Washington, D.C. area and throughout the Northeast to join us over the next couple of days as members of the Congressional Black Caucus host Brain Trust. We'll have members of the Obama administration that will be serving on panels and joining us at the events that will take place. Also, we'll have members from both parties that will be participating in Brain Trust. I think it's very, very important that we look at the educational part of what we're doing at this annual legislative conference, because many a times we get a lot of great ideas on how we can make America stronger. The Black Caucus has always been seen as the constant conscience of the Congress. And because of that, when Hurricane Katrina hit, it made the legislation for the recovery effort stronger and better. And because of the information that we receive from public policymakers throughout the country, elected and those that are working in the policy arena that are not elected, we were able to make the recovery plan a lot stronger. So with the kind of information that we will be sharing and talking about over the next couple of days will be very, very informative. Dr. Scott mentioned our interns and our fellows. It warms our heart to be able to not only raise the necessary resources to allow those who have not had an opportunity to serve as an intern here in this Capitol or a fellow, to allow that generation of leaders, I won't call them future leaders, I would say the generation of leaders that are now, to be able to put on their vita that they've had an opportunity to work with some of the great people you see standing behind me, and also work within the various agencies here in Washington, D.C. That effort alone will make America stronger. We'll be able to diversify the workforce, not only in the public arena, but also in the private sector, and will allow our country to move forward. Thank you so very much for being here this morning, and I look forward to seeing you as we move through the next couple of days. Thank you. All righty. Well, I talked about it a little earlier, but at this time I would like to introduce our chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Barbara Lee from California.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. Let me just say on behalf of the 42 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, I welcome you to the 39th Annual Legislative Conference. Let me take a minute, of course, to acknowledge Congressman Meek, and thank you so much for your leadership. Under Congressman Meek's leadership, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation has grown leaps and bounds, and it's all really about the future. And he has taken us into the future. So congratulations to you again, Congressman Meek. Let me also thank Congressman Fattah and Congresswoman Yvette Clarke for co-chairing the weekend this year, because they have done an amazing job. Their staffs have been phenomenal, and I tell you, people are going to be very, very pleased with the information and with the spirit of this year's legislative weekend. Also, let me thank Dr. ALC Scott and the CBC staff, the foundation staff, and all of the member staffs who have really worked day and night so hard to make sure that this conference is what we want it to be, and that is as educational and as informational as possible. Let me take a minute to acknowledge my colleagues who are here: Congressman Marcia Fudge from Ohio, Congressman Don Payne from New Jersey, of course, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who will be speaking in just a minute, from this great District of Columbia, and Congressman Mel Watt from North Carolina, and Congresswoman Diane Watson from California. The Congressional Black Caucus, we have, as I said, 42 members, 18 subcommittee chairs, and 4 full committee chairs. And so all of the members will be fully participating in this week's activities. And we are opening today, though Congressman Meek mentioned, with a Hill Day Summit for the first time since the ALC outgrew, of course, the Capitol grounds many years ago. The theme of today's summit is Opportunities for All, Pathways Out of Poverty. With this summit, we hope to re-engage the conversation, the tough conversation, I must say, on the intersection of race and poverty, and redefine poverty as it currently impacts communities, and discuss, of course, federal solutions for disrupting this poverty pipeline. Many of you may have seen the census statistics which have come out recently. More and more people are falling into poverty as a result of the economic downturn. This year's theme of the ALC weekend, Reinvest, Rebuild, Renew. This embodies really the spirit of the Congressional Black Caucus's mission as we seek to put our nation on the road to economic recovery while ensuring that no community is left behind. It speaks to the many challenges that America faces, but these challenges are really imbued with the hope and the promise of better days to come. Over the next several days, the members of the Congressional Black Caucus hope to engage the attendees in discussions about an array of critical issues and to develop ways with those individuals who are here with us this weekend, ways that we can work together to achieve the results consistent with the early mission established by our founders. Thank you again very much, and I look forward to the weekend. Let me now bring forward Congressman Shaka Fattah, co-chair for the ALC weekend, and then he will bring forward Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. As I said earlier, both of these co-chairs have done a phenomenal job in putting this together. Thank you.
Well, let me first of all thank my co-chair, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. She's done all the work, and I hope to receive all the credit. But it is, this is our 39th annual legislative weekend, but this is an historic one inasmuch as that this is the first time that we will gather when just a few months ago a member of the Congressional Black Caucus took the oath of office as the President of the United States of America. So we will gather at a time in which every manner of cabinet official and important person in this administration will be sitting with members of the caucus, grappling with the issues of the day. We'll have a major town meeting on tomorrow. You've heard about the beginning session today focused on poverty, and I think that talks a lot about the spirit of the chairwoman of our caucus, Barbara Lee, that we would know with a certainty that we still have a responsibility, even as we gather this weekend, to focus on those who have not yet found the opportunities that we want for all citizens in our country. And so we begin today focused on poverty, tomorrow on economic recovery, where we'll have senior members of the administration, like Melody Barnes, the senior policy advisor, and others gather to talk about the very successful efforts to now revive the American economy. But we want to make sure that we don't leave communities out that have been in recession for far too long, even before this one started. And then we go into the weekend. We'll have the President of the United States of America with us on Saturday night. We'll have the Bishop, Richard Norris, Saturday morning for a prayer breakfast. And all in between, hundreds of workshops, dozens of brain trusts, and Kendrick Meeks has done an awesome job leading this foundation, and I've had the great pleasure to work with Dr. Scott as we worked on this weekend. Well, really, as I watched Yvette Clarke do the work. But this is a great time for us because last year when we gathered, we were thinking about the potential of Barack Obama, President of the United States. And now we have the reality that the Congressional Black Caucus, 4 chairmen, 18 subcommittee chairs, members on key exclusive committees, but also having in the White House a partner who, not one who sympathizes with the concerns of the Congressional Black Caucus, but one who empathizes, one who understands, one who was raised by a single mother, who had to go on some of the public assistance programs like food nutrition, or what we call food stamps. So when we start a discussion about pathways out of poverty and opportunities for all, we have examples among us of those who've come from a very far distant place, but have risen to the highest pillars of power in our country. And that's the example, both in symbol and in substance, that this weekend wants to put a point on. So thank you for gathering. And I want to now introduce you to the workhorse. I'm the show horse. She's the workhorse of the annual legislative weekend, Yvette Clarke, Congresswoman from New York.
Thank you very much to the press, to all of my colleagues here gathered, to the community that has come. A pleasant good morning to you all. It's certainly my honor, my privilege to be here as we launch the 39th annual CBC Annual Legislative Conference. First, I'd like to thank Dr. ALC Scott, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and my fellow co-chair, Congressman Shaka Fattah, for his hard work, despite what he said, that has gone into making this year's conference a success, and we claim that today. I'd also like to recognize the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who's been an outstanding leader in the issues and the concerns of all of the members of the CBC, and the chairman of the CBCF, Congressman Kendrick Meek, a mentor and a friend who I envision going to higher heights. To Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who has been a champion for the District of Columbia and for all of us across America, and the rest of my colleagues. I am excited to see the different policies and initiatives that will come out of the discussions, forums, and town halls scheduled for this year's annual legislative conference. As African Americans, we must bring our voices to bear on the most pressing issues of the day. People should take away a clear understanding that we must become politically active to implement effective change. We must fight to ensure that our voices are heard, and right now, our voices are being stifled by those who are simply afraid of change, particularly on debate surrounding important issues like healthcare reform. We have a chance to pass a historic healthcare bill that will greatly benefit our communities. Research shows that minorities have less access to affordable coverage than their white counterparts. 52% of African Americans and 41% of Latinos have employer-provided coverage, compared with 71% of the non-Hispanic white Americans. Furthermore, half of Latinos and over a quarter of African Americans do not have a regular doctor, compared with 1/5 of the non-Hispanic white Americans. The time is now to stand united and raise our voices in support of the change our nation signaled for with the election of President Barack Obama. Today's young people need the ALC as much as ever. Economic justice is as big an issue now as when the ALC was founded. However, we must ensure that our discussions evolve as new issues present themselves. We must talk about entrepreneurship, wealth building, activism, and how technology impacts our lives. Oftentimes, we forget some of the greatest political movements were spearheaded by the youth. I hope that young people attending the conference this year understand that they have a responsibility to carry the torch of activism and to keep holding our nation's feet to the fire. The issues that I want to see a fair amount of discussion on is immigration. I am hosting an issue forum entitled Comprehensive Immigration Reform Census 2010, What's in it for us? Our panel will tackle the complicated and varied issues that affect the African diaspora, an issue that concerns the Caribbean and African communities, and the importance of the 2010 census. As the economy starts signs of recovery, last year's financial crisis, small businesses are going to be the engine that drives our recovery. We must ensure that minority-owned and women-owned businesses are positioned to contribute to the economic revitalization of our nation. That is why on Thursday, September 24th, from 1 to 2:50, I, along with my colleagues, Congressman Ed Towns, will be hosting the Congressional Black Caucus's annual legislative conference issue forum entitled The Roth Decision, What Does It Mean for Minority Contracting? We will gather a panel of experts to discuss the implications that last November's court U.S. Court of Appeals decision in the Roth Development Corp. v. Department of Defense has had on existing federal contracting programs for minority-owned small businesses. I not only look forward to the many discussions and forums of the ALC, but I know I will see minorities actively engaged in mobilizing and demanding action on the important legislative policies that will come forth through this year's conference. And I thank you all for coming. It's going to be an exciting conference, and I welcome all of you, your input, as we work through it as a caucus to make sure that all of our interests are preserved. At this time, I would like to bring forth the dynamic Congresswoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Thank you very much, Yvette. Indeed, I'd like to begin with some thanks, some really heartfelt thanks. Not only, I'm sure, on behalf of all of us who will attend, but particularly on behalf of the 600,000 people who call the nation's capital their home. We are particularly indebted to our Chairman Kendrick Meeks, to our other Chairman, Barbara Lee, and to those the rest of those who did the heavy lifting for this weekend. And you've heard from both of them, my colleagues, Jaka Fatah and Yvette Clark. Now, they offload on who did the most lifting, but I want you to know that the CBC and the CBCF team are just that, a team, and we're grateful for those who take on what is not an easy task. For the people of this majority African-American town, the CBCF forum annually is a really big deal. No national forum is better known in our town, and I must tell you, more appreciated. There is only one thing we ask for the really thousands upon thousands who are coming here from all over the country, and that is to let them know we are very close to getting DC House voting rights this year, and we ask them, all of them, who have 2 senators, who have 1 representative, to, in return for the hospitality that we are most pleased to offer, to email or phone their own members of Congress, their 2 senators, and ask that they support a gun-free DC Voting Rights Act this year. That's all we ask. And I know that when people hear this in our own generous community, they'll want to do it. The African American community and their allies and their business supporters are going to consider the most serious issues facing our country in decades this year. But Hometown DC wants you all to know that after the forums and after the events, now remember, we're here to do our homework first, but after those occur, it will be time to break bread together, to have some wine, to toast one another. And we got a bulletin for those from out of town. We want you to know that DC is not a government town, not with this many colored folks here. This is a cosmopolitan entertainment city. And so we encourage you, after the serious business of the caucus, to hang out with us. Thank you very much.
Are there questions from the media? And there's a staffer around that. At some point, we'll say that's the last question. So just so you know, as we begin, there will be an ending. But questions? That's the guy who will decide. Questions? Going once? Going twice? Yes. Yeah, let me say this. We're not going to get into the sessions now. We're going into session after this press conference, and we will invite you to join us in those sessions. We'll get into the detailed conference. This is a press conference about the weekend and about questions about the details, but there will be an open forum for you to discuss that. Thank you. Next question. All right, well, let me thank you all, and let me thank all of my colleagues.
Jackie Bird. She was the one who gave me the bone marrow transplant.
Save a life while you can in your lifetime.